Hey, this is Eric from Cafe Watercolor. Welcome to another painting demo. Today I want to share with you the process of this little painting of my friend and her horse. So this is my friend Anne and her horse Nova. So she shared a footage of them playing. She has this big sort of like a sandbag ball for the horse to play with. And I thought the lighting was beautiful and it is a very nice and little scenery that I wanted to make it into the painting. Because of the simplicity of the scenery, I decided to use a smaller paper so I can focus on the overall big picture. The reference image itself is not very high resolution as well because it's a screenshot from a cell phone footage, which is not a bad thing because I can just focus on the overall picture, the overall lighting value. Because aside from the subject is very lovely, the lighting is definitely something that I really want to capture in this painting. As always, we start off with a line drawing. Since we don't have a lot of detail to work with, it's important to focus on the overall shape. So having good shapes is very important in this painting. So especially something like horse and human, it's very important that we get their proportion right and to really capture their gestures. I also really want to capture the movement as well because they are in the middle of playing together. So I really want this painting to feel alive and feel like they are moving, they're in action. So trying to draw her walking, making sure her proportion is right, and also got her balance and her gesture down. So Anne is actually my friend in real life. We used to work in the same place. She has a YouTube channel as well. She shared her journey with her horse Nova. It's quite interesting. And I really respect horse owner because it takes quite a bit of resource, but especially time and patience. You need to establish this mutual relationship, this mutual respect with this couple hundred to 1,000-pound animal. And she shared in her video that it took a long time for her to establish this relationship, this trusting relationship with her horse before she can actually ride on her. So yeah, it takes a lot of patience and I really respect that. So I'm starting to do a value study. I did a separate drawing. It's a lot looser because I just really want to get the value down. So I start out with this value study. So I try to figure out the middle value first, which is the majority of this painting. Now the sense of light is very strong, so I will leave a little bit more light and paint around them. So most of the area that lit by the sun are in the light value. And in this one, the sun is so strong, even the local color of her sweater and the horse are black. They are still very, very light. So if you squint your eyes, all the light values sort of merge together. So this is the first layer of value study, which is just the middle value all connecting together. So back to our color painting. So the first layer we're going to do is actually the white of the value study, which is just the light value. Now, even though the light value is very, very bright, it still has some colors here and there. So I like to say the first layer is the color of the light and the atmosphere. So I start out by just painting the light value of her skin and give it some warmth to the light on the horse and the black sweater and the ground as well. So because I pre-wetted the paper, so everything that I put in is going to have a soft edge and the color is going to blend in with each other. Watercolor will dry lighter, so when you put down the color and it feels just right, it usually means that it's going to fade back to be a little bit lighter. So don't panic if it appears to be a little bit darker than you want. Don't give up so soon. Wait for it to dry, and sometime you might notice that it will fade back quite a bit more and it looks just right. So have a little bit of faith in watercolor and yourself. So here I paint the light part of the background trees. and also the light part of the background fence and everything. Continue and finish this wash. And you might notice that I didn't really leave a lot of white, only a few areas here and there. And I also use a little bit of masking fluid too in the areas that has very small highlight. And now I started to paint the middle value of the painting. So this is the first layer of the value study, as you can see in the side there. This painting is a joy to paint, not only because the subject itself is very lovely, but the colors are very simple, and also because I use a smaller size paper, it is very manageable, so I can really just focusing on enjoying the process of this painting. So I painted the background, give it an overall wash, but I also do some wet onto wet into it, so I can add just a little bit darker and thicker paint while it is still wet, so it gives a little bit sense of variety and volume in the background. Now I do have to be a little bit careful and paint around some of the highlight that I want to preserve. Now I'm painting the middle value on her face, and I have to admit it's a little bit scary because you starting to put in a lot heavier color on a figure. And you really don't want to mess it up, but at the same time, if you don't start and if you don't put on stronger color, the light is not going to show. So again, have a little bit of faith, a little bit of courage, and just go for it. And also continue down the value onto her dark sweater, because we will add darker value on her black sweater later, so we can just paint everything over as long as we don't cover up the lighting on the right. So we continue the shape down to her pants. So even though we're changing the color, we're still trying to connect that shape together, just like the value study. They are a similar value, and we just connect the shape together, and we separate them by changing the color around. And because we're trying to do this in a single wash, the color will merge a little bit, but that's actually the beauty of watercolor as well. You will have different color naturally blend in with each other. The value is a lot more important, so focus on that. The color can change a little bit here and there. That's okay. So now I'm painting the horse. It's very important to paint a good shape. Since there's not a lot of details we can work with, a solid looking shape is very important for this one. So you might notice some of the brushstroke, I make them a little bit straighter, some of the shape, some of the edges. I actually try to emphasize on the structure of the horse. So not everything is curved out. You can look at the back and the hip of the horse. I actually use some straight edges here and there so that it looks a little bit more graphical. So think about your brushstrokes, have a little bit character when you are painting specific shapes. Don't paint round edges everywhere. Sometimes you want a little bit of straighter, harder edges to emphasize the structure. Giving a little bit of a hint to the structure of the barn. And right now you can already starting to see the light is coming out. You can feel the glow of the sunlight. Even though we haven't finished this wash yet, just by looking at the contrast of the figure and on the horse, you can feel the light. And now I start to continue down to the ground. So leaving some lights on the ground, but most of it is going to be middle value. I'm using a number 14, a Skoda Versatile. And it is a nice brush, and I actually like to use a little bit bigger brush like this one because it will be easier for me to have enough mixture on my brush and make a good consistent wash. If I use a brush that is too small, there won't be enough mixture on my brush to create a big consistent wash. So it is very important that you don't use a brush that is too big. Now I switch back to my synthetic brush. With sharper point, I do a little bit of wet onto wet on the ground. So it will just have a little bit of variety. And also try to connect that value, connect the shape to the ball, the sandbag ball actually. And I actually want to do some wet on wet with the red and the blue. So I don't mind color merged together like that. I think that actually looks a little bit more interesting, a little bit more fun. So the second wash is almost done. I went ahead and add just a little bit of dark value on the background, just because I want a little bit of softness in the background so it doesn't compete with the main element, the main character, which is Anne and her horse. But I just want to add a little bit of occluded shadow in the background, and I do that while it is still wet, so it will have this nice look of soft shadow. So here's the first wash of Value Study and the first two wash of the color version side by side. So here you can compare them both. Now let's come back to our value study. So even though I finished the value study in one go, I kind of want to break it apart so that you can see the process a little bit better. So I start to paint the dark value. So as you can see, her black sweater and the dark part of her hair, this is the time to put that in. And once you put that in, she starts to pop out from the background and the light become even lighter. So the middle value and the light value are setting the stage for you to put the dark down and to really define all the shapes that you've been trying to prepare for. So same thing for the horse. Now the horse is a little bit more tricky because her coat is actually black, but I do want to have a little bit of the middle value remain so that she doesn't look way too heavy in value compared to the figure. So I create a little bit of a transition from dark to middle value so that it doesn't look completely dark and it still have a little bit of the form and structure. So paint some details on the back and also add a little bit of dark value on the ground because some of the shadow is a little bit darker and we want to pop out that light on the ground a little bit more. Adding a little bit more detail here and there. And here is the complete value study. Now we have a solid plan to move forward. Now back to my color version, starting to add the dark value to the painting. Now again, this takes a little bit of courage. Every time you add a stronger color, it always is a little bit daunting. So that's why value study helps, because it kind of gets your mental hurdle over with because you know how it goes. So when you are painting the color version, it takes a certain amount of stress away because the sense of uncertainty is a little bit less. So you do need to worry about the color that you mix, but in terms of the value, you already know what's going to work. So of course, the final painting is a little bit bigger, so I need to spend a little bit more time painting some smaller shapes. But the overall value relationship remains the same. So after painting the horse, I start to paint her hair. The dark side of her skin is actually middle value, so I'm not going to paint those. But her black sweater definitely is quite dark. And the horse is actually a good value reference when it comes to her sweater because they are pretty much the same value and even the same color as well. I haven't talked much about the color of this painting because the color of this painting is actually quite simple, but you do want to have a little bit of the green shade all over because of the surrounding trees. And you also want a little bit of warm shade because of the haze on the ground. So a good way to do that is when you are mixing different colors, use some of the color that you already mix for the trees and the ground. And most of those colors are dealt with during the middle value. For the dark value, there is a little bit of warm and cool difference. but the more important thing is to have that dark value. So careful and paint around the light. And when you have that dark value next to the light pops out. That's how you get this strong sense of lighting in this painting. And if you really look at the reference photo, I didn't actually change all that much. I just tried to recreate the sense of lighting faithfully on my painting. And that's why a good subject is very important. Of course, you are free to paint anything that you want, but a good subject will make your work a lot easier. So be sure you pick a subject that's suitable for painting, spend a little bit of time studying its value, do a value study, and it will just make your overall painting experience a lot easier and more streamlined. Here is the finished painting. I hope you enjoy this process of this little painting. I am Eric from Cafe Watercolor, and I will see you again very soon.